Welcome to Making the Cut podcast with Chris Hill and Sean Winter, where we help you succeed in life and business by sharing principles and strategies that guide some of the most successful people in the world.
Welcome to episode 20 of the Making the Cut podcast. I'm Chris Hill with my co-host, Sean Winter. Sean, how are you, man?
Things are well. Something that blew my mind is my little girl stood up for the first time the other day, and now she's walking along the couch. It is incredible to see the progression, Chris. It's blowing my mind, man.
Next thing you know, you'll have some first dates to deal with, huh?
Oh, no, don't progress that. But things are good. With Entrepreneurial Chef, we partnered with National Restaurant Association, their educational foundation. So very excited about that and to help kind of spread the word with what they're doing, especially with their new apprenticeship program. I think I told you about that, but they partnered with the American Hotel Lodging Association. And so they've got an apprenticeship program for restaurants to be able to sign up to take in apprentices, and then for the younger generation to have a track essentially for them to be able to start in a place and then work their way up into like a management track. So it's really, really, really neat stuff that's going on with them. So I'm very, very excited to support their initiatives.
That's kind of the first of its kind, right?
It is. Yeah, it is. Especially here in the States. They have these programs over in Europe and other places in the world for many years that a lot of people are aware of. But yeah, it's one of the first of its kind.
Very, very cool.
What about you? How's things going? I think you got some big news.
I sure do, man. Yeah, so got engaged a few weeks back.
Woo!
Proposed and somehow got her to say yes. It was funny. In the middle of it, we were celebrating her birthday, so she knew we were celebrating something. But we had gotten a nice townhouse type of place in Charleston. I set everything up outside, new candles and champagne, and had to work with the hotel to get that set up. And she was getting ready, and finally ready. I said, "All right, come outside. I have a little surprise for you." And she's like, "Come on, I got to do my nails. I got to do this. I got to do that." And I said, "Well, just come outside real quick." And I didn't want her to come outside with her nails wet, with a ring to put on her finger. So she begrudgingly comes outside, has a beer in her hand, and she's like, "Oh, well, this is sweet. He's got some champagne set up for us for before dinner." Then I start talking. I get a little bit emotional, and she's like, "All right, dude, just toughen up." She still has no clue that I'm about to ask her to marry. And finally, I get down on a knee, and I think at that point she finally realized that I was asking her for her hand. So it was fun, exciting, and definitely, something I'm looking forward to. It's gonna be a long year of planning and all that kind of stuff, which I know you've dealt with before too.
Absolutely. Well, congratulations. The fun has just begun. That's outstanding, man.
That's right, man. And I guess we'll have to figure out a good honeymoon location. Perhaps the Panamanian jungle.
Yeah, with Jimmy down there, who we're going to talk with here.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to talking with Jimmy. So Jimmy's, we've been friends since I was 5 years old. We grew up together, played Little League together, and still keeping really good contact today. He's the founder of Kaluyala, which is a modern version of a sustainable town in the middle of the Panamanian jungle. Since 2010, Kaluyala Institute has offered students from around the world the opportunity to conduct research projects on best practices in sustainable living. The Institute classes include agriculture, biology, business, education, and community development, design thinking, farm-to-table, culinary arts, and the list goes on. Now, recently, the program, which has had students from over 25 countries and 150 colleges, was the subject of a Viceland reality TV series called Jungletown. And I'm interested to hear his take on this because I know there's a little bit of controversy. The show depicts a nascent settlement in the jungle, which is Kaluyala, and it's where young interns are paying to essentially learn and be a part of this community. But throughout the show, these interns, some of them leave the community prematurely, citing reasons. They include the difficult jungle environment, mental illness, and some other concerns. Now, that's also the reality TV's spin on what might not actually be the real case for Kaluyala. So I'm excited to hear really Jimmy's take on entrepreneurship, on what they've built down there, the challenges they've faced along the way, and he's been a good buddy. He's a great guy, and I'm looking forward to it. So where do you say we hop in?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to it.
Let's do it, man. Jimmy Stice, what's going on, man?
Hey, brother, just chilling here in a hammock out in the Panamanian jungle talking to you on Skype with our high-speed internet that we put in last November.
Yes, sir. Well, you've been down there for about 10 years now. To start out, maybe you could tell us your surroundings, what you're looking at right now, and also just a backstory, how Kaluyala came to be.
Sure. So right now I'm sitting on our farm. We've got 575 acres in the middle of a 7,000-acre valley. It backs up to a 300,000-acre national park that's one of the 21 biological hotspots in the world by the number of species coming through it and the threats to it. And I'm on an open-air platform, sitting in a hammock chair next to my big tent, looking across the field at a bunch of other platforms where we've got team members with their kind of living quarters set up. And a little ways away from me is our beautiful river that's all spring fed that comes out of this valley and goes down to the Pacific Ocean. And we've got only a couple people up here right now because we're in between semesters for our institute. So a lot of staff are on vacation. But we've got some of the farm crew here. It's planting season right now with all the rains coming down, working in our greenhouse and our food forest.
So where did this idea come from? How did you get started in all of this?
I think the idea came from the fact that I'd been exposed to the real estate industry a lot, and I think that it has a very bad reputation for being exploitive, for extracting resources, for sometimes being destructive towards communities, towards reinforcing segregation, post-civil rights. There's a lot of problems with the real estate industry. At the same time, we all need a roof over our heads to when the rain's coming down. We need a safe place to sleep, a place to hold meetings, a place to cook meals. And so it's an industry that we need, and we need it to be good if we're going to be able to have a life here on Earth where we're making the Earth a better place and taking care of our neighbors. So the idea of how do we develop real estate in a way that's good for the planet and good for each other kind of rang out in my head when I was kind of in my late stages of high school. And that's what started me working on this.
And Jimmy, maybe just give the listeners a quick, backstory of 10 years ago, you saw this plot of land. You said, "What the hell? Let's go for it." How did you go from an idea to, "All right, y'all, let's go ahead and do this"? I know your dad was in real estate before, so you had a little bit of help from him. But how did you actually go ahead and execute on the plans?
Sure. Well, I think the first thing is you realize the problem. And then when you realize the problem, the first thing to do is to look for solutions that other people already have, because there's 7 billion people, most of whom are probably smarter than me. And I really quickly found this niche of town builders and kind of the green real estate industry, and started looking at best practices from all of them in order to formulate a thesis of my own. Once I had that thesis of what socially and environmentally responsible development looked like to solve that problem that I'd identified, then it was about market studies and finding a piece of land that was appropriate for the vision and at the same time that was appropriate for investors.
And now, how did you get people to buy into this vision? Because you couldn't do it alone. So what did you do to get people to really buy into it, to now they're dedicating their lives to this?
Well, I think a big part of it is paying people. If you want people to buy in, I think that a salary is a good place to start. I think once you've got that taken care of, the next step is having a vision that's worth buying into, that somebody else can see what their role is in that vision. Right now, we've got farmers, chefs, instructors, maintenance people, lawn people, a really wide variety of different skill sets being employed here with different backgrounds in order to make this all work. And so they've got to see how to, if I've got a background in hospitality, how am I part of building a new sustainable town?
So Jimmy, how has the vision for the community, since the beginning changed, and if at all?
It changed a lot in a really specific way. So I would say that the image of what does responsible real estate development look like is largely the same. It's renewable energy. It's organic farming that's localizes our food sources. It's building with diverse access to different types of housing and price points so that you can create a lot of diversity within the town. It's using development to pay for conservation by building with density in order to preserve other areas. That's all the same. But the big change is that when we started in 2008, it was all of that progressive vision on a traditional business model of let's go out and raise $10 million, let's bring in $20 million of debt, and let's crank and go and bring in a big CEO who's 45 and has a ton of experience, all this stuff. And then the crash happened in 2008. And that really made us question, well, maybe it's not that the real estate industry is a bunch of idiots who don't know how to build in a way that's responsible. Maybe it's that they're using a business model that's forcing them to build in a way that's irresponsible. So once that crash happened, we changed it to where the financing is really a lean startup, bootstrap, bottom up, a lot of engagement from people like students telling us how we could do things better by doing research rather than hiring 50-year-olds to tell us how things should be done.
And so what, in that process, what were some of the lessons that you learned as you were going along that bootstrap, that kind of lean startup mentality?
I think the number one lesson you learn is start small until you know what you're doing. It's a dumb idea to start big because it creates a situation where failure will kill you instead of failure being a lesson. I think probably the second thing that I think most entrepreneurs end up learning is that nobody gives a shit about your product until they've used it. So most entrepreneurs are obsessed with their product and they think if they build it, people will come, and that's a load of crock. It's really that you've got to market your product in order for anybody to ever show up and try it out. You've got to build a team to deliver your product, and you've got to finance your product. So your product is the last thing that gets done, even though it ends up being the most important. You don't get to ever get to product until you've marketed, built a team, and financed getting that product delivered.
So, Jimmy, you obviously go out into the jungle. You had a steep hill to climb. You go out into the wilderness and you just, I guess, start building somewhere, right? There's obviously a lot of work that need to get done. What would you tell someone starting out that has a big vision for a company or for an idea like yourself? Or maybe what were some things you wish you would have known back when you were starting out?
I think, the big recommendation I give to people now who are young entrepreneurs is to picture the oak and then design the seed. Like, picture your biggest version of what your company and your product could end up becoming, but then figure out how small can you make the initial idea to start delivering. Because it's probably not going to end up looking like you think it's going to look like, but it's probably the DNA of that seed is going to come from knowing what you want the oak to look like. So that's kind of always my tip, is picture the biggest version and then cut down till you're left with the most basic version of what you're trying to do.
And I'm sure there's been plenty of trial and error along the way.
That's all. That's what you're really trying to set up for. When you start out doing something really small, the reason is to allow yourself to fail and have that failure be really small, so then you can do it better the next time and get better that way.
And now, what was the attraction to Panama versus either another place or trying to do something like this in a remote area of the United States? What was that decision-making process like?
I mean, the regulatory environment in the United States is a joke at this point in time. To try and do anything innovative is pretty much impossible without a huge budget. So that was kind of number one, is I wouldn't be allowed to use trial and error because they would want me to tell them what I was doing for the next 30 years in order to get permits. Number two, I think Latin America, stable countries in Latin America have a lot more upside for our generation than the U.S. does in a lot of ways due to how efficient the U.S. has become. Number three is, just to be honest, like the romance of the tropics, the balmy air in January, the hammock lifestyle year round is pretty nice for me personally.
Well, I will say I still have a bag packed from one of my last trips, so I can jump on a plane. I'm ready. I am ready to go. I've been to Panama, down in Costa Rica and Nicaragua area, but not Panama.
Well, we've got a guy here right now from Costa Rica designing a canopy tour for Maurice Stringer, a partner of ours, who's building a canopy tour here. And so we've got Tico's here right now. I think there's a lot of connection in Central America between Nicaragua, Costa Rica, and Panama.
Very cool. I'd feel like a real asshole if Sean made it down there before
That would be pretty bad, Chris. That'd be pretty bad.
Jimmy's been trying to get me down there for close to 10 years now.
Yeah, exactly.
And so let's just dive right into the Jungle Town. If you're listening and haven't heard or watched the show on Viceland, it's a docuseries that won
Well, the truth is, right now we're pretty much on the warpath against Jungle Town. We're about to release a video made by students responding to what they think of Jungle Town, which basically says that it's a bunch of bullshit. That we were told we were making a docuseries, and a bunch of reality TV producers showed up down here, identified the most melodramatic students, and took an attitude that represented less than 5% of the people here, and turned it into something that completely misrepresented us in any facts. So Jungle Town was an example of a mistake where we went really big and it almost killed us. We had this opportunity, Viceland, to make this television show, and we thought, gosh, you just can't turn down an opportunity. Let's lean into it. And it almost killed us. It took our recruiting costs doubled because of the show. Obviously Viceland's a much bigger animal than we are, and so the story on the internet about us is their story instead of ours, and it's a bunch of bullshit to sell television ads.
Gotcha. So the interviews that I've seen, I saw originally the interview you did with the founder of Viceland,
with Shane Smith. Yep.
Yeah. Are y'all on good terms, or is that kind of like a touchy subject?
I think Shane Smith is one of the best journalists of our generation. I think that Vice is one of the and I think he was super cool to me when we had that interview, and he asked great questions, and I think he actually cares. I think that his company right now is pretty focused on maximizing its valuation through following A/B testing and identifying the lowest common denominator versus following the vision of a founder. That's kind of my personal interpretation of what's happening on Viceland, and I think you can look at their television programming for this next season to see that it's not the same quality of news or content that Vice is.
Yeah, well, that's a shame because just the whole way that all turned out, because all of us that are somewhat smart we know what's going to sell. We know what's going to be popular on Facebook. This can get a lot of shares or a lot of views. So it's easy to take a little bit of hours and hours of 1 week and then make 30 minutes out of it. There's obviously drama throughout, and they kind of spin you the wrong way. What would you say to people out there that might have a different opinion of Kalyala versus what you really actually set out to do?
I'd just say that, if you look up for voices on the internet of people who have actually been here, you'll see that right now we have half the dropout rate of any other study abroad program in the world. We've got 92% of our students would refer a friend to it, which I think is the most flattering thing you can ever get from a customer. We're right now we've got 8% of the carbon footprint per capita compared to the U.S. So we're accomplishing our social and environmental mission. We're changing lives both here locally and with students who come down here and people who work for us. And I'd say listen to people who are actually part of it, not people who are selling you something.
You don't have to convince me, brother.
And now, Jimmy, what is the business model for this community?
Sure, it's pretty easy. It's that when you're talking about real estate, you're essentially talking about two things: creating a place that people want to be, and then if you're really lucky, creating a place where they can get a job being there. And so what we're trying to do is to take a cow field and actually have it become more carbon neutral or carbon negative through our development of it and our adding of people and population to the cow field. So the business model is ultimately to sell houses. The business model is ultimately to be in the hospitality business. And then what we're doing is we're using a research institute to create that product and make that value proposition to everybody.
Jimmy, I read one interview where you said that you don't see yourself as much as a leader, but more of a person seeking out best practices. How would you distinguish those two? And if you're looking to scale, how does that work?
I think that I really like, when I say I don't see myself as a leader, I think that if I look around at everybody who I work with, I see Brigitte and Julio and Paloom leading our culinary efforts here. I don't really know how to run a kitchen or make great food, but they do. I see John and Zoe and Chicho driving our farm ahead. I think really what I'm always looking for is who's the people who are smarter than me, who are better at what we're trying to accomplish. And I think that's the best way to build a team. If you try and do everything yourself, you're never going to scale. But if you find people who are talented to help be part of your vision, your scale is, unlimited.
And a lot of people struggle with bringing in talent or individuals and then relinquishing a bit of control or placing enough trust to allow them to be innovative. Was there a bit of tension because this is a project that you're very passionate about, obviously, so you don't want things to go awry? Was there a bit of tension in that early process of hiring people, placing trust into them, allowing them to move forward, and what was that like?
That's really where the Institute came to play. Is the cool thing about education and education as a privilege is the fact that it doesn't have to produce economic value necessarily. It needs to produce intellectual value. And so by having an institution and following a school format of charging tuition, having that pay professors, it allows people to essentially operate in a laboratory environment where failure is totally permissible and even at times encouraged in the search for innovation.
Yeah, I wish I would have learned more in school that was hands-on versus everything was in the classroom in like the vacuum of a business case study.
Exactly, where it's all theory. And so I think that's really what we're trying to do is say we're building a town here. There is a town here right now. There are 100 people who live here every day. But at the same time, it's the real world, but at the same time, it's built around a college. It's a college town right now. And so therefore you're free to try out an idea and it doesn't have to work. And that's not going to cause anyone to lose their job if it doesn't.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Jimmy, you've seen my evolution over the last, since we were about 6 years old, but
yeah,
you've definitely, you've seen as I've kind of built my brand, personal brand, you kind of on the same lines. You've done a lot of speaking. We both done TEDx talks. Remember, we connected at South by Southwest when you were giving the talk there. Has that been part of y'all's strategy for getting the word out there and showing the world that you're a thought leader in this space?
Yeah, I think that, like I said earlier about how it doesn't matter how great your product is if no one knows about it, how you've got to start with marketing and make the world aware that there's even the chance to touch and be part of what you're offering. I think that's where thought leadership and public speaking and PR come into it. I think PR is the best form of marketing. I think it's more authentic. I think it's more cost effective. And so it's not so much that I've been scared to death of public speaking. I hate being on stage. I don't like being in front of large groups, but I believe that my ideas were sharing. And so I've worked my butt off to get better at going in front of groups and being out there in the public in order to share that idea so that people can have the chance to buy into it if they want to.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what would you say in relation to that last part right there for the individuals that are trying to get some press for themselves or get themselves out there? What would you say are some tips or advice or things that you've learned along the way that have helped you?
The biggest thing to ask yourself is, why is this relevant to other people? I think a lot of us get caught up in what is awesome to us. And I think that asking yourself, why is my work relevant to others, is the starting point. Relevancy to an audience is the most important part of a message ever getting out and being spread. And if it's not relevant, you probably shouldn't be doing it. Number two, I'd say if it is relevant, then stand up tall and pull your shoulders back and believe in what you're doing. And think about, okay, if this is relevant, why is it relevant? And why should people be aware that it's relevant? And build your talks around that, because there's a dearth of thought leadership right now. I hate to say it, we might be in the TED age, but right now the world wants leadership. I mean, right now we're kind of facing this nihilistic, secular lack of vision. I mean, look at the United States right now and just the fact that a country that has done a lot of work to inspire democracy and representation through visionaries right now is just kind of it's kind of lost its way. And so I think the world wants something to believe in more than ever.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think part of getting people, on board with that is building a community around what your vision and beliefs are, which I know is part of what you guys are doing. Every semester you have folks that come down there, and I'm sure create incredible relationships with each other, and then as a result they go back home to college or wherever, and then tell stories and help kind of spread the gospel, so to speak.
Yeah, I think we all want to be part of something, in our short time on earth. We all want to be part of something that matters, that makes the world a better place. And I think you can do that as an accountant at KPMG, or you can do it building a town, or you can do it as a chef.
And one of the last questions for me, Jimmy, would be, what would you do differently if you were starting all over again from scratch, knowing what you know now? What would you do differently?
It's such a tough question, because you can't ever be where you are if you didn't go through what you went through. So I think a lot of people, we tend to default to I'd probably do it all again, even the bad parts. At the same time, I'm looking forward to doing it again. I'm looking forward to starting my next town and getting to kind of shortcut through a lot of the learning that's gone on here. So I guess what will I do differently? I'll put one foot in front of the other without tripping, I hope. And that basically means starting with the marketing, building the team, and then delivering the product in a way that we've already learned what the product is and how to work as a team. Just a lot of soft skills more than anything else.
Yeah. So with the future for Kalyala and the bigger picture in general, I know y'all are starting to build out the little tiny houses. What's the 5, 10, or 20-year plan?
Let's see. So, I mean, the 5-year plan is have a fully functioning town here where you can apply to get a job here, or come study here, or come vacation here, and where we're selling a product that we're creating in this town that the world can buy, whether it's a jar of something we've canned or a professional service like sustainability consulting. The 10-year plan is to build 3 more towns so that we are introducing a replicable way of creating a humane and environmentally responsible the real estate development model to the world.
Very cool. Now, Jimmy, I have one more question. We were about 11 years old probably, and our friend John Gordon moved into a new house over there in the Highlands, and we started building a baseball field. It was in floodplains with super high grass, and I imagine that being 11-year-old, the task we had in front of us to chop all this grass down, it took 3 weeks of our summer, and I was like, you know what? I'm done with this. Was there any point in the early days or even along the way where you got frustrated and you're like, maybe this isn't going to work, or had days where you just felt super discouraged?
If you don't burn out, you're not ambitious enough. And if you let the only reason burnout should ever beat you is because it wakes you up to the fact that your idea actually shouldn't be happening and doesn't work. But when you burn out and you have to re-examine what the hell am I doing with my life? Why am I here? Why isn't this working as well as I wanted it to? You've got to say, well, is this still a good idea? And if it's still a good idea, you got to take a deep breath, realize it's just life, wake back up and get back to work. So that's kind of, I think, if you're not getting your ass kicked, you're not doing it right. But if you're getting your ass kicked and not getting any better, you're probably not doing it right either. So I think burnout's kind of part of the entrepreneurial life.
Couldn't agree more. Well, Jimmy, thanks for joining us, man. It's been an absolute pleasure. Keep up.
Hey, guys, thanks for having me. Both of you need to start looking at your flights, get your butts down here. Sean, I think you could put the pressure on Chris pretty easily by just starting to even fake a flight that you booked and show it to him.
I'm just gonna put a flight in the checkout cart and take a screenshot.
Yeah, exactly, and send it on over to him. Say you're gonna be there or not.
Jimmy, you always say February is like the best possible month, right?
January and February are basically Central America is heaven during those months. It's great. Right now I'm having a blast here in the rain as well because it's a little cooler. But January, February, you're going to have perfect weather every day in Panama.
And y'all got some moonshine down there, right?
We do have our own still. Yes, sir. We got rum coming off this still.
Rum.
We'll make a little white whiskey for you too. Don't worry about it.
So y'all using sugarcane?
We use sugarcane when we're doing the rum, and we use corn when we're doing the whiskey.
One more question while we're talking about, crops and everything. I have a very small garden in the backyard, but what all do you guys grow there and how many acres?
Not nearly enough acres, but we've got first greenhouse is open, second is on the way. Food forest to demonstrate how you can kind of have a permaculture approach of really low maintenance farming. Our big crops are first we start with our staples of starches, bananas, plantains, cassava, which they call yucca down here. And then we've got a lot of Asian greens coming up in the greenhouse, trying to get tomatoes at this low, hot altitude, which is pretty tricky, but we're finding some that are working. A lot of eggplant, a lot of kale, and let's see what else we've got. And then a ton of fruit trees. Like, we got mango, water apple. What else have we got? Breadfruit. I mean, it's just kind of, I think I got to say we've got probably like 60 species of fruits and vegetables growing right now.
And I guess all year round in and out of the greenhouse, right?
Yep, exactly.
Very cool, man. All right, Jimmy, keep up the good work, buddy. Talk to you soon,
Gentlemen,
man.
have a great day, dude. Thanks for the opportunity to talk.
Thanks, man. So that was our conversation with Jimmy Stice. Sean, what were your takeaways?
I think for me, I was trying to just envision being in his shoes and picking up, going to another country and building something from scratch. It's not like what I'm doing with Entrepreneurial Chef, where yes, it's from scratch. It was just this complete idea and then start building it up. You're talking about going to a foreign country and actually building an infrastructure. Just the thought of that blew my mind, and how he's been able to progress that mission more and more and more. And then his vision of being able to essentially package that and then now do it again, make it replicable in other places. I think it's phenomenal what he's been able to do. One thing that he said that I really liked was, if you don't burn out, you're not ambitious enough. So it was something that I sat back and I felt at ease, because I've burned out several times doing some of the things that I've done. But I thought that was a pretty interesting perspective. But overall, what a great conversation, and just a great mission that he's got going down there. What about you, Chris?
Yeah, and just to piggyback off of what you were kind of just mentioning, I think one of the quotes I love from Chef Thomas Keller is, he says, it's not about, passion, because passion fades, but it's about desire. And desire is kind of what keeps you going when you do have the challenges, along the way. It was fun for me to connect with him, a guy that has incredible vision, who, like you said, was willing to take that on with obvious challenges, in the middle of the jungle. And kind of on the same lines, one thing he said was, picture the oak, kind of the final product, or whatever you want to call it, but design the seed. And that's how kind of your culture is really formed, and how you are able to grow with whatever it is you're trying to do. So I think that's something really important. As long as you have a real understanding of the seed and where you want to start, that seed's going to continue to grow as long as you continue to water it the right ways. And then, I think he also, as I definitely know, is he said, you can't be where you are if you don't go through what you've gone through before. And, I think every situation in life shapes us and molds us to be the people that we need to be in the future. And, especially for them over the last year or so with the whole Viceland challenge, with them not being portrayed in the best of light, they know kind of what they stand for. They know what they represent, and they know the impact they're having on people, all over the world. So it just kind of goes back to, if you're doing something good, if you're doing something that can change people, that you're going to have haters, you're going to have people that are going to give you, challenges along the way. So that's really, I think, there's a bunch of great information throughout, and it was fun to connect with him. You can connect with Jimmy on Twitter at Jimmy Stice, or at Kala. They have a great social media following. They have a great page over on Facebook at Kala, Kalayala, Kala. And keep up with them. Let them know what's going on. And we'd love for you to tweet out, Facebook out, whatever it is that you share your social media channels, and let us know what you think. And with that, we'll leave you the quote from Jimmy. Asking yourself every day, why is your work relevant to others is a good starting point. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us.